Whatever makes it easier. Okay. Welcome to Probably Irrelevant.
Possibly interesting.
With Mark and Wade. He's Mark. I'm not. Today is the day before Thanksgiving here at Munson Brothers. It's about, what would you say, 55 degrees outside?
Oh, yeah. And windy.
So it's a bit chilly. We are not sitting at our normal spot because there's some nice folks over there having a big old time. We don't want to bother them. So thus the beautiful dumpsters in the background for us all to enjoy.
I wonder why they put those there. It's blocking the entrance to that parking lot, so obviously that's purposeful.
That's a good point because they're not usually there. So are they using them to block the driveway?
Some kind of anarchist did that.
An anarchist with a very strong back.
Toted those over there.
Right, it's like a Columbus Banksy. That's
Yeah.
what we have over there.
Sure.
In fact, those dumpsters are actually made of cake.
I saw a show in Japan. It was a clip.
Yeah.
And it was...
Hi, everybody.
I don't know the premise of the show because it's in Japanese. But it was like dessert or not, and the guy...
That's a big thing, man. There's like all kinds of shows where it's like it looks like it might be like a Sony PlayStation 2, then they cut it and it's like lemon cream cake or something.
Yeah, but this was like 5 or 6, 7 years ago. I don't think it was a big thing there. I think it was just some wild Japanese thing. But it's like a handle on... I remember the guy's got a door handle, and he goes up and he's like... and he eats it, and it's a door handle. And one is a shoe.
Yeah, that's a thing. I mean, I've seen a
Wade,
bazillion
you know
of
I don't know
those.
about pop culture.
You don't know.
I don't know about relevant things.
Well, I think you do know about relevant things. You just don't know the things that most people take for granted that everyone knows. Like, for instance, you famously do not have and never have had really any social media presence whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right.
And when you have to like deal with it, you do it through your wife's stuff typically.
Yeah, or make you do it.
Or make me do it. That's true.
I just don't... I can understand... Are you asking me why I don't? Is that a lead-in to ask me?
I mean, it might as well be.
Well, Facebook, if you recall, when it came out, you had to have a college email address to register. Do you remember that?
I do, but I think the time that I was involved with it, that had
lapsed.
passed. Yes.
Okay, so they were rolling it out to different universities, and I can remember people being like, oh, like, for instance, I think University of Alabama had it before Mississippi State had it. So people had it there, and I think they rolled it out to Ole Miss and Mississippi State simultaneously. So if you had whatever the msstate.edu.
But it was confined to universities.
You
at
couldn't.
first.
Yeah, you could not sign up for it unless you signed up, had that address, which I did. But I think I just graduated from college, and I was still living like around all the people that didn't graduate from college on time, and younger guys that I was friends with. And all they did on Facebook was go see like all the girls from Mississippi State that joined Facebook or Ole Miss or whatever.
Well, that's kind of how the thing began anyway,
all right,
right?
so yeah, it kind of fulfilled its mission, and I was like, this is stupid. Why are we what is the point of this? A, I had a girlfriend. B, I was a working man. I didn't care. And so then as it got bigger and bigger and kind of more monstrous in its design, I really just fought it. And then now, as whatever is the successor one, so like Instagram and then TikTok or whatever, the successor popular social media, I'm kind of aged out of it. Like, what am I going to do on TikTok? Look at people.
You're going to do a TikTok dance, man.
Or what? I mean,
Don't do a TikTok dance.
Obviously, I'm not going to do that. But whatever would be like an age-appropriate 40-some-year-old person does on TikTok, cooking recipes. I don't know. Barbecuing. I don't know. I'm not going to join TikTok to look up how to smoke a turkey or something.
I don't. That's one I've never had is TikTok. But I was.
I am on Instagram, so I can't.
You have an Instagram account?
Yeah, I only. What do you call it? It's not subscribe, but whatever. Follow 8 people.
Okay.
And there are people that like sell toys or.
Yeah.
Or something. It's some kind of niche thing that is basically commerce. Because like one guy, what do you call it? Like 3D prints stuff on there that he puts up there for sale. One guy finds like action figure parts places. So it's a strictly commercial enterprise.
But it's safe to say there aren't a lot of selfies of you like doing this at the camera.
Yeah, zero. Zero. I mean, it would be cool for me to, I guess, see what all the people I went to college with are doing. But I mean, a lot of them through.
Almost said something I shouldn't have said there. But go ahead.
A lot of them through the people that I know, that I keep up with from college, I can say, like, oh, what's so-and-so doing, you know?
Yeah.
And
you're seeing a reflection of what they hope that you think that they're doing on those things, and not generally the reality.
And coincidentally, I think a lot of people that were my age when they graduated from college, they just don't participate in it anymore, or infrequently participate in it. So it's really not.
I think I came
not
at
useful
it
for me
from a different direction. Like when Facebook was absolutely a thing, was at the exact same time I was becoming reporter guy.
Okay.
Right? And so I saw it as a potential tool to sort of let people know what the reporter guy was doing, right? Or to let to maybe like tease a story I'm working on, those kinds of things. And
so you used it as like professional advertising.
Yeah. And then as I continue through my career, because so much of it is like forward facing, marketing type stuff, I had to have a Facebook account and use it for that. Now I certainly posted stuff, and typically it's all like, oh, here's a funny thing my kids did, or something that made me laugh, or here's a funny thing, or the occasional, especially after I worked at the high school, the occasional political rant. If a rant about being a moderate and calming down can even be called a rant. Put those kinds of things up there, but if I could go back in time and blast it from ever existing, I 100% would.
Well, I would for sure, just for our children.
It's not good for civilization. And yeah, for our children, like my kids who are, one is about to be 14. I mean, I'm going to go as long as I can without him having any kind of social media thing. As long as I can control it. At some point, I won't be able to.
I mean,
if he's clever enough to hide it from me, then.
Well, what would he use? Like, I read about people that say, like, even Facebook and Instagram to a lesser degree, whatever's the key demo for those technologies are aged off of those platforms by and large. That could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, he's not going to get on Facebook, is he?
I doubt he'll get on Facebook, but he'll get on TikTok would be a thing. And no, I think like when you and I were kids, if we looked up to like anything in the pop culture, it would be like maybe musicians, maybe like comedians, whoever you were encountering on TV. And it's kind of the same for our kids, except it's just content creators on YouTube generally.
But I mean, like YouTube.
All the kids want to be YouTubers.
That seems like not a fun existence. But I do like YouTube. I think it's useful, and there's a lot of
extremely
niche
useful,
things that I like that are on there.
Yep.
Like I sent you that dorky thing.
That made me laugh really, really, really
Well,
hard.
stuff like that. Who would you know besides your like close group of friends, or like my cousin that would play Hero Quest? That was the video.
Hero Quest is a board game, and he sent me a very funny video about it by something. The Bardic, is that his name?
I can't remember.
I'd like to check because it was great. It was really good.
It's an old video, but it's a British guy.
I thought he was Australian.
Is
he sounded Australian to me.
Oh, I thought he was British.
Well,
Australian's a British first cousin. But anyway, like stuff like that, it's like my son when he plays video games and he wants to play with somebody and talk to him. I was like, well, why do you want to do that? He's like, because I can talk to my friends.
Yes, and that's how they con me into it too.
I vividly remember, and I didn't talk on the phone a lot, but I can vividly remember talking on the house phone to like my friends.
Oh yeah, there was a little point in my life where it was like new and novel, where you just call everybody you knew and just like talking to them on the phone, and it seems so strange to do that now. Like I can't imagine just like calling, like even you on the phone, just like, "Hey Mark, what are you doing?"
But you won't believe there are people. They're older than us. Some of them not too much older, but when they get in their car, they get on their phone and start calling people
just to have somebody to talk to
while they're driving, instead of like listening to NPR or sports radio or whatever, classic rock. I have people that I do business with
Who just call you?
that will get on the phone and just call me.
And it's not like annoying. You don't mind it.
No, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of it is business related. Some of it's just shooting the bull. But it's people because they drive, and when they get in the car to drive, they'll call somebody and talk to them on the phone.
Like, what do they want to talk to you about?
If it's non-business, it could be anything. Talk to me about deer hunting, or because that's I talked to somebody about that recently. So the season for that, anything, just whatever's going on. Sports, house football, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, blah 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 blah.
Okay.
So I think there's a segment of people that do that, but I don't know anybody that's younger than us that does that. People older than us?
No, I definitely don't. And I definitely, a thing, and I haven't been to a function like this in forever. Remember when you would go like to your grandmother's house or your whatever older relative's house, and there was a time when everybody had to have coffee?
Oh, yeah.
And you just sit around in a room and they just drink coffee and talk about, when I was 11 anyway, it seemed to be like about absolutely nothing at all.
I'm sure they talked about whatever those people call me about now.
Right. And talk about nothing at all may be the equivalent of what this show is. But, but yeah, I don't know. And it'll certainly be different, and they do interact with each other in a different way. One of my kids has an Oculus. Well, I guess technically they both do because they share it, but other than them, hitting dragons with swords, they're basically just having the same stupid phone conversations I had with my friends when I was their age.
Oh, yeah.
They're just more active. Like I think Fortnite's the one that our kids play together, or used to play together. I don't know. I think Fortnite's not cool anymore.
Okay.
I was asking one of them about that the other day. He's like, Dad, Fortnite? Yeah, you mean this thing I bought like hundreds of dollars of gift cards for because it was the only thing in the world that mattered to you? That thing? Yeah, nobody plays Fortnite anymore, Dad. Come on.
Well, what do they play?
This thing called Rec Room.
I don't know. Mark doesn't play Rec Room.
It looks awful. It looks like if you got your Android phone and hooked it up to your television, the graphical power that would be coming out of that. And I mean like an Android phone from like 2012.
LG chocolate.
Yep. But you know what? Hey, I've never understood Minecraft either.
Man, my son used to play that. I can understand the appeal of that. I think I could, but like when my son would try to get me to play with him, I don't understand it in practice.
Hit this tree 10,000 times and then go and figure out how to turn that tree into sticks and then figure out how to turn that tree. I mean, if I wanted a construction job, I feel like I could get one.
I don't know. I think I can remember our two sons playing that. I think they had vivid imaginations in it where they were imagining.
Oh, they had a big old time.
They were imagining whatever they imagined they were doing.
And I'm not crapping anybody who likes Minecraft. And I'll say this. I've seen some amazing Minecraft creations. Seen some amazing stuff. But I don't know. Just never did anything for me.
I think it just was. We weren't the target demo on that, I don't think.
Definitely not.
I don't think we were. Yeah, I don't know. I think social media is a good thing. To me, it's a business. It's just become a strictly business proposition now. I think there are some people that, and that's the way I interact with it in my business. I have things that we do that are business related that we do on social media. But personally, I mean, I guess I'm just old. But a lot of people I know, they're not gonna.
I'm older than you, and
but you use it. So that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. I don't really use it for personal benefit. But if I was going to give my wife to say, "Hey, what's so and so doing?" Look them up. I think
that is true. You basically outsource your social media is what you do because you can always ask her, like, if you're curious about somebody,
right,
to spy on them for you.
But or she's friends with a lot of them because we went to college together, right? So a lot of those people, if something happens dramatic, she'll tell me about it. But a lot of them just aren't doing any. They're not doing anything with it. So I guess in the white hot heat of the moment when it came out, I missed out on something. But as the star has cooled,
I don't think you missed any. I don't think you missed out on anything. I will say a cool thing about having, like for instance, a Facebook account for so long, is there's just this little record of like my kids getting older. That's just there, and I know you're like, so Mark Zuckerberg owns your memories. And I guess to a certain extent that's true. But it is kind of bittersweet in a nice way to come across like, oh my gosh, at this date, at this time, my kid had underpants on his head.
But are they going to appreciate that?
No, probably not. But I guess you're right. I guess that's the moral equivalent of your mom breaking out the photo album and showing everybody your bare 3-year-old butt. Does your mom do that to you? Like you in the bathtub or something like that?
She would probably show like girlfriends I had or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. That's what I mean.
With me.
Right?
That's actually probably not why. But.
I would hope not.
Yeah, like I was talking to somebody, I don't know if it was my cousin but the amount of boxes that we have of photos,
yeah,
from Walmart or the drugstore, those file folders. I mean, it's got to be 10, just like bank boxes that you could get.
I'm sure we have at least that many too, and I have no idea what to do with them. I'm sure there's a service where you can send them off and get digitized, but then what are you going to do with them?
Lose the CD that they're on. Nobody has a CD to put the damn thing in, a player to put it in anyway.
Oh, you wouldn't get it on a CD. You get it on a jump drive or something.
A jump drive, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, my mother did do that with our home movies. So all the home movies. So we had, of course, the original VHS that fit in there like a brick. But do you remember when they had the micro VHS?
100%, man.
With the
if
adapter
you lost
tape,
that tape adapter, you were screwed.
You could never watch
right.
it. And she took it to a place in town, and they put it all on, I think it's on DVD. All on DVD, all these, hours and hours of home movies.
Oh, and I hope they charged her something, because that sounds like the most tedious, horrible job in the world. Because you'd have to do that real time. There's no way you can just like take the data off the tape and just transfer it. You have to record it as it's happening, which means the hours and hours and hours. Someone had to sit there for hours and hours.
I mean, it's
and
hours. Like, there's videos. This is my dad. I had a sandbox in the backyard, and my dad would put me out in that sandbox and let me play. There's videotapes where he's out there like, Marky, blah, 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 blah.
Pretend the cigarette butts were soldiers.
No, and he'd come out there, and I'm playing in the sandbox doing whatever, and the thing is on a tripod like this camera.
Yeah.
And then I'm out there playing, he leaves, I'm out there playing, then I leave, and it'll just be 2 hours of sandbox till the tape runs out. You got like 30 minutes of tape, and then maybe like an hour and a half of just sandbox.
Well, the way my dad would do it, and he got very into his camcorder when he got one, and it was a Panasonic, and it was the shoulder guy, the big guy.
Yeah.
And he would, I think in some ways, my dad wanted to be Ken Burns, because he would get that camera and he would narrate everything that was happening.
Like while you're like opening Christmas presents or whatever.
Now there's Mark Alexander. He graduated from Mississippi State University.
I don't think that's uncommon. I think a lot of dads do that, because my dad did some of that. Probably not to the extent that your dad did.
Like long form stuff. Like he went on this trip to the Southwest once, and he goes everywhere. And the novelty of those kinds of tapes is that you see people in whatever era they're in, right? Like it's neat to see, your dad in 1989 or whatever it is. What's not neat is seeing a still shot of the Grand Canyon that he's holding for 15 minutes as he talks about the Grand Canyon for 15 minutes.
How it became a national park.
Exactly. Like you can very well maybe reading a pamphlet as he's holding the thing.
Yeah.
And I guess the only reason you do that is you have some anticipation someone is ever going to watch this ever. And, of course, that never happened, unless he forced us to sit in the room and watch the narration that he would do.
But you can go back and watch it now.
Oh, I'd cry like a baby watching it now.
The worst thing is when my dad or whoever had it, they would be like, and here's Wade Leonard. What you doing over there, Wade? You remember that?
Yeah,
where they
and then you just go like...
yeah, right, where they would say, like, whatever you're doing, or you'd be eating. What you eating over there?
Yeah, the whole novelty of cameras is completely and utterly gone. Like
because that was a big deal then.
Yeah, it was a big deal. You had so much film, you had so much tape. You better make it last. Did you ever have one of those like little thin cameras that had the giant flash thing that you stuck in there?
I never had one. My cousin had one. I always wanted one of those. Nobody
You have to
knows what
wait
we're talking
2 weeks.
about.
You know, it's a camera, okay? It's a camera.
This-
it was considered to be, super sleek because it was only about that big and about that wide.
It was like
had
this. It was like
flash
3 packs of cigarettes lined up with each
That's
other.
exactly what it looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was an insurance adjuster, so we always had a Polaroid around for taking pictures of wrecks. And then we'd always get in trouble because my brother and I would find it, and I mean, take pictures of our knees.
Waste all the film.
It was very satisfying, the whole Polaroid experience, because you push the button and it makes that awesome like, and then spits the thing out.
Those have kind of come back in vogue a little bit.
In kind of the same way records have, right? Where it's just the tactile sensation of having it is fun.
I think the thing that, it's so much better, in my opinion. I mean, I don't take a lot of pictures because of my glass eye. I kind of look like a doofus. But I'll take them if somebody's like, hey, take a picture, Mark. I'm like, okay. So was never like, hey, let's take a lot of pictures. Because I always look weird. Of course, I didn't always look like myself.
Yeah.
So that was my own personal hang up. Anyway, if you... But, it was a thrill to go. Like, if you remember to be like...
You know how hard it is to sit across from you and just have to look at you?
Really? It's
Yeah,
disgusting.
it's awful.
It is. It's repulsive. I should put a bag over my head. I should put 2 bags over my head.
2 bags over your head.
But, I mean, I did have a minor... It can look awkward. So why do I want to see a bunch of awkward pictures?
Oh, I get it. I don't like the way I look on camera either. I just sort of learned, like everything else, just like... The only person who's anxious about it is probably me. And if you look at me and go, ugh, then there's literally nothing I can do about that.
Well,
So,
I didn't learn
who
that
cares?
lesson. But, can you remember going to open that envelope of all the pictures, whatever
Yeah.
it was, and you'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, and it'd be like funny ones. Remember you find like funny ones where somebody's doing something. It's a
Right.
it'd be candid photos. I think that's some of the appeal with that. Because my daughter has one of those.
Yep.
It's miniature. It's about
Mark's got one. They make little tiny Polaroids.
it's about 30-40% the size of a original Polaroid. I think that's why she loves it, because you get an instant, like
Silly
candid,
thing?
candid photo. Which I can understand that.
Sure, it's fun.
Because
Especially fun for a little
everything
kid.
else is, like you said previously, in social media, they're just deleting all the goofball things, and all the goofball things you would see are just staged.
It's kind of funny, because the way archaeology works, right? Is there are artifacts of things that archaeologists can find. They'll say, "Oh, so here's a picture that was made by whatever," right? I wonder if we'll get to a point where, because everything is so non-material, I suppose, that there'll be this weird point thousands of years from now where archaeologists are just like, and after 1997, we don't know what the hell happened.
We'll probably have annihilated ourselves in nuclear fire.
Well,
so
I'm trying to be optimistic, man.
nobody's going to be looking. But I do understand what you're saying. There's nobody that's going to go back and find some scrap and extrapolate what 20th or 21st century life was like, because it's not going to exist. It's going to be on a hard drive somewhere or in the cloud.
It's like that theory, and it's imaginatively appealing. I don't think there's any real evidence for it, but the idea that there was a civilization that like predated the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians by like 10,000 years, but was somehow wiped out by some great catastrophe.
Oh yeah, that's
But
that's a Hyborian age from Conan.
Exactly, that's right. But they were somehow so technologically advanced.
Okay. Yeah.
So think like Magic Atlantis or whatever, and it got wiped out. And I suppose you could infer that maybe one of the reasons you couldn't find any artifacts that they existed is they had some sort of, I don't know, ancient digital culture, and all that stuff would have been wiped out. That's my conspiracy thought of the day.
They probably just tattooed all the information on like a servant, and then they died and rotted, and they lost the information.
That's another possibility.
It's the best I can come up with short notice.
I was thinking of old computers. You were thinking of just write it on TED.
I mean, that was the goofiest thing I could think of.
Well done, sir.
I guess they do find those people that are encased in ice and mammoth dung in places, though, that can be preserved with their skin. So that
Yeah,
blows
they
my
do.
theory out
I
of
don't know
water.
that anything like a tattoo would remain though.
Have you seen these temporary tattoos? No-
Of course, I've seen temporary
Our-
tattoos.
But let me be more specific. There's this, I can't remember the name, but you get a tattoo and it lasts for like a year,
oh,
and it fades over this period. I really think it's called temporal tattoos.
so it's the "Do you want to move in with me but not marry me" kind of tattoo.
Yeah, you can stay here, but I'm not going to give you a key.
Okay, no, I
think
have
it's
not
a
heard
re-
of those.
I think it's called temporal tattoos,
Temporal tattoos.
Yeah.
Okay.
but not temporary. I think that's what it's called, and I think it's got something. So you get you get a tattoo and a tattoo gun, and it's got some kind of ink that is absorbed into the body and dissolves itself.
Maybe it's made out of lemon juice, and you can only see it when you heat it up.
It could be, or put the black light on top of it.
That's right. I'm not gonna say that either. No, I've never heard of those. You thinking about getting one?
Hell no. I mean, I don't have a tattoo. You don't have a tattoo.
If we got like 10,000 downloads in the next 2 months, would you get a temporal tattoo?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, depends of what and where. I'm not going to get it like on my face.
Well, I mean, you didn't say that. You just said sure.
No.
No, not on your face. Like wherever you want, and I guess whatever you want. But would you do that?
Yeah, I would get like the podcast logo tattooed on me.
There you go.
I mean, I wouldn't get like a big schlong tattooed on my arm or
well,
something.
You know, girls got to have standards. I wouldn't. I've got no interest at all, and to the point.
Not
now,
even the one I'm talking about.
No, I wouldn't do it.
I mean, what are you going to lose there other than money?
Because I've decided that I just don't want one. So
You're just a hipster.
I am not. If I was a hipster, I'd have tattoos all over me.
You're the anti-hipster.
I've got some good friends who are professional tattoo artists, and I really admire what they do. If you think about how difficult it is, first of all, just to draw a picture that looks good,
Right.
But then try to do that on moving, living flesh while someone's uncomfortable because they're getting stabbed a gazillion times. It's truly, absolutely an art form. But I think it's going to get to the point, at least within our lifetimes, it's going to be significantly more rare to meet someone who just doesn't have a tattoo at all.
So you're saying it'll be like passe?
It'll be the inverse of us when we were kids.
Right.
Like having someone with a tattoo when I was a kid, I mean,
They were in the Navy or they were in prison?
it was rare.
Yeah.
It was rare. I won't say that they were necessarily in either one of those things.
I mean,
It
I
was
would say
still
a
rare.
lot of the people that I saw that had tattoos, most of the people had like some type of military tattoo. That if you saw it, it's like
Yeah.
an old guy that had a military tattoo, or it was either some dude you did not want to fuck with.
And if you saw anybody, like, it's not uncommon to see someone, one of these really intricate full sleeve tattoos, right? Which, on a lot of people, those look really cool. But there was nothing like that when we were kids.
Oh no.
And we
Oh,
would have
no.
thought they were some kind of monster. I can remember clearly, and I think I might have been 13 or 14, but we were eating at a restaurant in Columbus, and a guy came in and he had blue hair. And I mean, it's like the whole place shut down. Nobody was ugly to him, but just looking at him like, what in the world did you do to yourself, right? And now I see people with blue hair pretty much every day of the week.
Well,
and it's fine.
That was kind of the progression at that time, right? You had hair, blue hair. Then you had like a
Chain wallets.
Then you had a nose. Well, maybe chain wallets was the preamble.
Right.
Then you had some type of alternate hair, nose ring.
The piercing thing, you're right, because when I was like a freshman or sophomore, and more girls than guys pierce, like all that stuff seemed like it happened at once. Like one day someone didn't have any piercings, the next day they had like their belly button pierced, their eyebrow pierced, a whole line of stuff down their ears, nose, and the big old tongue bar. And it just seemed like it came out of nowhere.
I think it did. That was our time period where that was kind of a rebellious thing to do. Then just like tattoos kind of became passe. I'm sure there's people that are eating up with piercing. They love it. but where you had just a girl be like, okay, I'm going to go get, or a guy even knows this, my eyebrow, whatever, all this crazy stuff. Because it was anti-establishment, right? It was rebellious to go do that. And then it became popular. So you quit doing it.
And I think, in a few years, even things that are still considered a bit on the fringe, like face tattoos, I think those will become completely mainstream. I think we will see people running for Congress who have face tattoos within our lifetime. Like legitimate, serious candidates.
I don't think that'll happen. I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened. I don't know anybody with a face tattoo that runs like a Fortune 500 business that's the CEO of a Fortune 500 business.
Not yet, but I'm saying it'll happen eventually.
I think it'll burn out before that happens.
I bet you could say 30 years ago you didn't know a single person who ran a Fortune 500 business who had a big sleeved up arm, and I bet there are several today.
But I wouldn't know because they had jackets and coats on all the time.
Sometimes little stuff pokes out on the neck.
I don't think it'll proliferate to that extent.
I think it's a good thing, but I think one thing that does seem to be consistent is people seem to give less and less of a crap professionally and in terms of what like your output is as to what you look like or what you choose to how you choose to decorate yourself.
Well, I think that's a good thing.
I do too.
Although I think there's some measure of decision making that goes into like getting tattoos like all on your face. Depending on what your level of interaction is, if you've got to go negotiate multi-million-dollar deals and you walk in and you've got shit on your face,
if you're
either
running a hospice, you probably shouldn't have.
I'm saying you're either the baddest ass person at your job in the world, and you can right now, and you could afford to do that, or you made some really bad decisions in your life.
But okay, put it this way: if it's 1985, right? And a person walked in the room and they had, forget face, just like a big old neck tattoo of some kind, right? Just poking out under them. My grandparents would have thought they were an evil person, just out the gate, immediately. If someone were to walk in today doing that, I don't think most people would immediately assume they were an evil person.
I don't think so. I just don't think it's a fair analysis because if somebody walked in right now with a 16-inch mohawk, they would get more recognition than somebody with the tattoo you described.
I think that, that's true. But that just kind of proves my point because the tattoo thing is becoming so mainstream and so common. That's why it's sort of baked in because a bunch of normal people have gotten tattoos, basically.
But I'm saying like the mohawk predates that. It kind of in popular culture.
I knew a guy who had, I don't know if it was 16 inches long, but it was pretty daggone tall, and he used to rock it. And that's where I learned that, you know how you keep them up? Elmer's glue.
Okay.
Elmer's glue. He used about a half a bottle of Elmer's glue every day to keep that guy staying up. And I was like, that's no different than a beauty routine like some, a fashionista goes through.
I always wonder what happens if you lay down at night. Does it just turn into a big sideshow bob hair?
The Elmer's glue. So you wash the glue out, and then you have this sort of floppiness, and then you comb the glue into it.
I would imagine if you say I don't have super straight hair, but if you had your long hair and cut your hair into a mohawk and did that, and then you wash the glue out, it would just kind of be like a big butt cut.
Well,
wouldn't it?
Of course it would. Yeah.
Where it then if you lifted it up, it'd be shaved.
If I made it go like that.
But it would just be like, I can remember. But don't you remember?
Mohawk.
Don't you remember those guys? Where they didn't do it as a mohawk, but they would take their hair. Like your hair, you could do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, where you shave under it.
They take your hair and lift it up, and they shave their hair up
under
there.
Then you usually have like a ponytail and a sort of shave thing around the side.
And you could lift your hair up, and it'd be all shaved under there.
I definitely knew people who had that going on. I never approved of it, but
but that's kind of like inching towards mohawk. If you just kept going,
it's a non-committal mohawk.
I thought it was cool.
It was fine.
I thought it was cool, I guess, because I could never do it. Like, if I grew my hair out real long, it would just turn into like a...
I always imagined a Art Garfunkel type situation.
My hair?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'd be more kind of like a Jimi Hendrix or something, where it was kind of like flopping down.
Like Art Garfunkel.
His was a little more poofy than mine would be.
You're right. The thing about Art Garfunkel, he did kind of like a light bulb.
Mine would probably be more like a 1992 Eddie Vedder, where it was just like look disgusting, and then it would just get long and look like I went and got a perm.
Oh, Eddie Vedder.
I would like to see them in concert.
Oh, of course, I'd love to see Pearl Jam in concert. I know you got in your head that I didn't like Pearl Jam. I think it's funny. Like I'll say this: I don't like any of the bands that tried really hard to be Pearl Jam. Like the only person who's allowed to go is Eddie Vedder. Anybody else who does that is not approved by me.
I mean, what if that's their natural way they sing?
Nobody naturally sings like that except Eddie Vedder.
The weird thing about that album is there's like all this like just ambient talking and sound in the background.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe when they inducted Who in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but that would make sense. But it was some kind of a something. I don't know, it was like a tribute to the Who. And now I can't even remember if it's Eddie Vedder gets up there and sings with the Who, or it's Pearl Jam covering it. I think it's the latter. But they play Love. They play Love Reign O'er Me by the Who. Have you ever heard that song?
I have. Absolutely.
And they play that song, and it's friggin' good. Because I think he kind of mediates a lot of that, what you're doing, which is back throat singing. Or whatever you would call it, kind of like grunge yodeling. That's what I call it, grunge yodeling.
That's actually a fantastic way of thinking about it. Sorry. The Who's awesome. Bob O'Reilly is like, if I need to get worked up about something, I play that song.
What is that song even about other than cool synthesizer
It's about
parts?
a teenage wasteland, man.
Well, I got that.
Don't cry, Mark. I don't actually know what it's about. It's about Pete Townsend doing the windmill.
And him programming a synthesizer in a time when that was really damn complicated.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And people being wasted in a teenage wasteland.
Did you ever watch the Tommy?
Yeah.
The movie?
Yeah. I mean,
it's a wild one.
Are any of those movies ever good, though?
Depends on what you mean by good.
Well, I mean, like any of those.
I'll tell you, okay, I would
like
say
The Wall by
I was
Pink
about
Floyd.
to say The Wall. 15-year-old Wade thought The Wall was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah, watch it now.
You can't. Because it turns out it's a bunch of gobbledygook. When at the high school I went to, like the big thing when you were a senior is you had to do, it was just called the research paper. And you had to write a paper. And it was sort of like a micro thesis. But you're still in high school. And so I chose to do mine about The Wall. And
well, you were eating up with it, weren't you?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And so I had to read all these books about Pink Floyd, and had to watch the movie several times. It was all because of the movie. And I managed to get to the point where it was due the day before, and I hadn't written a thing. And in one of the
How
most
uncharacteristic.
and not a thing. And in what I still consider to be the most heroic of my academic achievements, I wrote 28 pages about The Wall in 11 hours.
Still have it?
No.
Oh, I was going to say we should read it on air.
I think I got a C.
Hey, man. How long? Wait a minute. How long from when you? How long did you know about the due date? So how long? How much time
it was
elapsed?
like the whole year. Like it was.
So you let basically 9 months elapse and condensed it into 11 hours of just
like fear
feverish
and torture. Yeah.
And you got a C?
I think I did.
I'd
all
call
right.
that a success.
I do too. But I did read the books, and I actually did the research. I was doing that. I read a lot of books about Pink Floyd.
I don't.
And you come out just kind of not liking Roger Waters. I hate to put it that way, but you just.
But who likes him now? Like anything you see, he's just acting like an anti-Semite.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know exactly what he did, but he's in a lot of trouble for anti-Semitism and something about the war in Ukraine. I think he might be a Putin apologist.
I'm sure he is.
But see, I don't want to say that because I don't know. And you know what? I don't want to say I don't like Roger Waters. I mean, not so much anymore, but I really liked Pink Floyd. And after Syd Barrett, went off to cuckoo land, I mean, the driving personality, voice, you can't argue with it, is Roger Waters. I mean, if you like Dark Side of the Moon, you're a Roger Waters fan because he's the one who composed all that, wrote the whole thing, put it together. Say what you want to about Dave Gilmour. He's a good guitar player.
Sings better.
Huh?
David Gilmour sings better.
David Gilmour may sing better.
His voice sounds better.
But in terms of like...
He's handsomer.
In terms of like making the stuff, okay, there's a big difference, for instance, with the Pink Floyd albums after Roger Waters leaves. And they're very meh.
Classic rockish.
Well, more like that sort of...
I liked one of them.
Late 70s Rolling Stones, like when they tried to be a disco band. That's what it makes me think of.
I like one of those. I can't. It's the one with the beds all on the cover.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this. Isn't there one with like Easter Island heads on it?
Yeah, those whatever those are called. Starts with M.
Maui, not Maui.
It's like
Maui
or
Moriai.
Yeah, something like that. I just think Roger Waters comes off as a pretentious dickhead.
I think he does, but I think he made good stuff.
When you're the guy that...
I mean, The Wall is fundamentally about how hard it is to be a super successful rock star.
I like The Wall, and I'm not going to like poo-poo on your 11-hour torturous escapade.
Go ahead. I think I'm doing it right now.
I just think that just like a lot of those double albums, would have been a lot better if they would have condensed it into even one like 14 song, which would have been like a double LP. Like I think that's a quadruple
there
LP.
There are some very good songs on The Wall, and but if you'd have gotten a brutal editor in there, it would have been considered up there with Dark Side as one of the classic rock albums of all time.
I just think it's way too masturbatory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the way the show, because also a lot of The Wall was a big stage production, is they slowly build up a wall between the audience and him, so at one point you don't even get to see the band anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Roger Waters just kind of the proof's in the pudding. He's kind of come out and just basically seems like a pretentious prick.
Again, I don't want to.
Anti-Semite.
I've never met the man, and I don't.
Well, I don't meet a lot of people, but if you act like a racist, anti-Semitic piece of shit.
Anti-Semitism is I don't know that he's done. I don't know what he's done. I'm not defending anything. I just don't know what he's done that's anti-Semitic.
He always has these snide anti-Jew remarks. Everything it's
like
just,
one of those. Well, look at Hollywood.
Why are you surprised? The Jews are running
right.
bullshit like that he'll say.
Yeah.
All the time he says it. I mean, I think he kind of fairly recently. I might be wrong. I'm gonna look it up after this show. Remember when they got up David Bowie's ass? I don't remember, but there was the news thing where it shows him in an outfit that could have been construed as a World War II German outfit, and it looks like he's doing a Sig Heil, but he's got his arm out.
I know
like
what you're
this.
talking about.
He's like in mid-wave, and it looks like he's doing like a 90-degree Sig Heil while in a parade.
I think it was called fascist chic.
I think there's things with Roger Waters doing that shit in the last like 2 to 3 years. Maybe not doing the Sig Heil. Wearing
Hugo Boss, because by the way, y'all, Hugo Boss, they're the designers of those Nazi uniforms.
I don't think it's exactly a Nazi uniform, just like Star Wars uniforms. The Imperial Army wasn't Nazi uniforms, but you get the gist of it.
Yeah, a lot of goose stepping.
So maybe it's fits into his theme, but he kind of has become all those things that he reviled to me. He sides with fascist dictators. He gets on board with all this totalitarian bullshit all across the world. In the things that I read, maybe I don't know what I'm reading.
Again, I don't, Yeah, look, I'll say this.
I think it's better.
If you're an anti-Semite and you're hanging out with fascist dictators and you're excusing them, then you're a bastard person. But at the same time, Pink Floyd made some good records.
They did.
And, that is interesting. It's like, how far do you separate the thing the guy made versus the guy himself?
Depends.
But I know. And that's so unsatisfactory, but I think that's the only way that you can look at it. Because, it's not like if you look at, many of the people who would be considered like the great artists, writers, it's almost uniformly they were just god-awful people.
I think it
maybe uniformly is too strong, but there's a fair number who just like did things like abandon their families or became affiliated with some political position that turned out to be like Hitler-y or just even for the time period they were in, just odious human beings, but they made good stuff. You know what I mean? Or had some really terrible opinions about one thing or another.
Well, I would even split that hair even more fine, which would be some of that stuff that we look back in retrospect. If it's in retrospect and it's a product of the time, it's very difficult to kind of
inflict the current morality on it.
Yeah, on them and say, well, they were just this was a shitty 100%. Opinion and they were shitty people. You can do that, although I think that's a little bit of a miscalculation. Now, again, you could do that. I think it's different when you have people who made great things and then are alive and actively like stepping in dog shit, or like I would say, like Roger Waters or somebody, and he could get on and defend all of his positions. I think he's one of those people that has almost no nuance whatsoever, that maybe tends to seem like you're a bigoted anti-Semite, but any time that he's quoted, if you were misquoted, any single person would pick up the phone and say, hey, this is Roger Waters from Pink Floyd. They're not going to be like, click. They're going to pick up the phone and talk to him.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was a random guy that got misquoted and he's doesn't have the
juice to fix it.
Yeah, to set the record straight. And I think there's even more nefarious characters. I know you and I have talked about it privately, but like Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, that's a really. Okay.
What can you do with Bill Cosby?
Here's an even to an even more in that same boat, and I do not know the answer to this question. I am posing a thing for you guys to figure out for yourselves. Bill Cosby should be in prison right now. He's not because of a technicality. These women should go after him for every single dollar that he's ever made. From what I understand about everything that's happening, his wife should probably also be prosecuted to some extent because evidently she knew all this stuff was going on.
Okay.
He is arguably the most virulent serial sex assaulter
that's been caught
ever.
Well, that's been
who
caught.
Isn't a goddamn Viking or something, right? Especially within the context of being this America's dad, and you can remember where he was especially the right would always prop him up as sort of the family values of like black culture. He propped
himself up like that.
Eddie Murphy famously told him to go have a Coke.
But he was the biggest star.
And by the way, I haven't listened to them in years, but I would put his big stand-up breakout that is what the content of that show turned into what the Cosby Show was. It's one of the greatest stand-up specials ever made. There's no question about it. If you want to do stand-up comedy, you should watch that show to see how to do it the right way, okay? But at the same time, maybe we ought to just make Bill Cosby as a person go away, which brings me to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson apparently had a thing for children. And I don't know that anybody argues that.
But he never got convicted.
Is that the difference?
I'm not defending him. I think that's a stark difference between Bill Cosby and Michael Jackson.
But if Thriller came on right now, people would just be there would be no controversy over Thriller coming out. What I mean is, like, if a Bill Cosby bit played right now over the speakers in this bar, it would be kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
But if Thriller played, people would get up and dance. And I don't even know if it's hypocrisy. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it does seem how, like, almost as a cultural force, we pick and choose which ones we want to keep and which ones we're willing to get rid of to satisfy our moral prerogative.
I think I would say two things just specifically that differentiate that. One, Michael Jackson is dead. So I think there's some...
So it should be easier to erase him.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's some... I don't know what forgetfulness that occurs when these people are dead.
Yeah.
Two, I would say that in addition to not being convicted, it was never tried. All the people who
there was a civil trial, wasn't there?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not defending Michael Jackson that civil trial, but celebrities get sued civilly all the time.
Sure,
they do. I mean, if you're any type of person. If you read about people, I mean, just consenting adults having sex, and you're just a random person, and if I got picked up by a celebrity, or you, and you were going to go bone a celebrity, they're going to make you sign a non-disclosure agreement that you can't talk about it, you can't do. I mean,
It's got to be a very romantic thing, right?
right, okay, let's do it, sign this.
Exactly.
And a lot of that is, and I think
Yeah, baby, I'll call you.
is, and you probably all in that non-disclosure is you waive your right to sue them for whatever, anything real or imagined. I think if you're a celebrity, again, it's not specifically to Michael Jackson, but civil suits for people that have money, I think, are just.
If you have money, it's a thing that will probably happen
It's
to you.
just raindrops, that you're just hitting you. You go outside, it starts raining, you're going to get rain on you. Bill Cosby, I think, is because he was so. Although Michael Jackson was around a long time, but Bill Cosby, 40-something years of comedy. He was in the 60s, man, making comedy.
Oh, I know.
The Cosby Show was the biggest show on TV.
It was a thing at my
we didn't turn the
country
TV
ass
off.
grandparents.
Oh yeah,
had to watch the Cosby Show.
I mean, on Thursday we didn't turn the TV off because you know what else came on Thursday? Cheers and the Cosby Show. But again, like Michael Jackson, I think some of that with Bill Cosby is that Bill Cosby is relevant to us, right? Bill Cosby is not relevant to our kids. Michael Jackson is relevant to our kids. My kids.
But the only reason it'd be relevant, Michael Jackson's relevant to our kids, is because at some point we introduced them to Michael Jackson.
Or they hear it somewhere.
Well, I mean, we as the collective we. Like it's culturally still around.
I guess what I'm saying is the access to Michael Jackson in a 3-minute Beat It or Thriller is easier than understanding, like watching a Bill Cosby stand-up comedy routine or watching a 23-minute episode of The Cosby Show from 1988.
Actually, I blame Weird Al Yankovic for my children liking Michael Jackson because that's how they got introduced to it.
I don't know how my kids got introduced to it, but they like it. And I don't know the difference.
When Billie Jean happens, and my youngest one, he'll get down on you, man. He'll just get down.
I think Bill Cosby's an interesting case because he was the biggest celebrity that got convicted. He got convicted.
He did. Yeah, I know. And it seemed like impossible for him not to be convicted.
Right.
It was, because if there's one person that I would imagine the zeitgeist was like a say it ain't so Bill kind of guy,
right.
It was Bill Cosby.
Sure.
I don't think anybody wanted it to be true, but I can remember, what was this, like 2017 or so when all this stuff happened? It was like dozens and dozens of people. Dozens of people.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And at some point, maybe 2 or 3, you're like, well, maybe they're trying to, but, damn, Bill.
It was like every woman across all these years.
Yeah.
Across years,
across
decades.
years and years and years and years. And they all had the same story. It's awful. Just horrible. Just horrible.
But, so to the point.
Do you think he wishes he would just go ahead and die?
I'm sure not.
Or do you think he's just like, I'm on out here.
Pudding pops.
Pudding pop. Whatever.
I think he's one of those people, like a lot of these, I don't know what you call them, sociopathic people, where they believe their own bullshit. And they convince themselves.
Well, he was right for most of his life, as it turns out, because the reason he got caught is a comedian named Hannibal Buress. If you've never seen Hannibal Buress is super funny. Hannibal Buress just got on stage one night and just was like, everybody knows this is happening. Here's what Bill Cosby does, and someone in the audience. I mean, this is a thing social media did. Someone in the audience recorded Hannibal Buress saying it, and then it went everywhere. And then people started coming out of the woodwork and said, oh, yeah, that's true. That happened to me. Hey,
well, see, I didn't know that, but that leads me to believe that it was probably one of those well-kept secrets in Hollywood.
If you ever get a chance, when Eddie Murphy gets the Mark Twain Award, this was maybe 2015. It was several years ago. Eddie Murphy goes up to accept the award, and it's a good show in and of itself. And for about a 5-minute chunk, you see Eddie Murphy doing stand-up again. And most of it is about Bill Cosby. And he goes, who is Hannibal Buress? But it's really good. Watch the Eddie Murphy thing. And speaking of people who I wish would get out and do it again, that's the guy I would love to see, is Eddie Murphy do stand up again. I think before the pandemic there was some talk about it. No, there was, because I was talking to you. I got really excited. It's like, it looks like Eddie Murphy's going to go on tour, and you were like, okay. Would you go see Eddie Murphy?
If it was convenient.
Yeah.
I
like stand up.
He's
kind of nah.
I think he's got enough money. He's not going to go do that.
I just wish he would, because I don't know that anybody is naturally better at it than he ever was. Because if you think about how old he was when like Raw came out, he was like 21 years old, man.
He's past his prime.
Well, maybe. I'll still go see him.
So I don't know what you do with those people. I think you take it as it is and dismiss some people, and everybody makes their own personal choice of whether you want to consume that product or not.
It just seems like an emotional rule rather than a hard and fast rule. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, I just don't know, because you obviously see the other side, where if you're accused of anything and you try to get canceled or erased from society, that also seems unjust, right? Like, I think it's good that we want to give people a second chance, depending on the level of whatever crap they pulled. And so that seems like a good thing too. But at what point do you say this person is a monster, yet the thing this monster created is so brilliant that it's important for us to still partake in what this brilliant monster did? I mean, not in a criminal kind of way, but William Faulkner's a little like that, right? William Faulkner was, in Oxford, they call him Count No Account, because he just lied about everything. And he was mean and ugly to people, not a nice guy.
Well, I mean, I don't think that matters for shit. I don't think
you see what I mean, though.
I don't think
But I think there are some people who think that's part of the game to play. Like, you have to be this extremely nice, super moral guy. Otherwise, we're going to knock you out of the collective consciousness, and you need to follow one political agenda over another political agenda. And all I'm saying is because there's clearly a separation, right? Like, and I don't know, and time seems to be a big component of it. Like any of the, like Plato, Aristotle, the ancients, like in terms of what they did like day to day, would have been considered monstrous and odious. Like, for instance, they all owned slaves.
But that's what I said. I don't think looking through that prism is just reductive and
I am
useless.
agreeing with you, but what I'm saying is like, and we've said that, okay, that's reductive and useless, and so let's pay attention to the things that they created. Not that we know much about the biography of either of those guys, but what they made mattered and is important. And so at what point, and what are the particular sets of circumstances that allow that to become easier other than just time itself?
I think it's the scope, the depth, and then if they're charged and convicted in a court of law. I'll give you an example that's not really artistic, but is an example of a comeback story of a person that I think was treated unfairly. People will get pissed off, but I don't care. Is Michael Vick, the quarterback. Remember Michael Vick?
Dogfighting?
That he got convicted of dogfighting and also killing dogfighting dogs. Okay,
his opinion does not necessarily reflect the opinion of me or a probably irrelevant podcast.
But I'm saying, he was treated with so much visceral hatred, more than Michael Jackson. Right, to your point.
Yeah.
More than people that have done things to human beings, okay? I'm not advocating. I don't think what he did is right, but there are scales, there's sliding scales of things. We know there are because, the recompense in the courts of law for these things are different between crimes, between humans, between animals, between the types of crimes, etc. And yet he gets convicted, goes to jail.
Yeah.
Okay. He's probably
has paid for his crime.
He's probably the highest profile quarterback in the NFL at the time, if not the highest profile, maybe 1, 2, or 3. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Michael Vick. Maybe there's 1 or 2 other flyers in there, but the 1 or 2, 3 biggest guys in the NFL. Okay, doesn't rat anybody out. Goes to prison himself. Okay. Comes out, gets a second chance in the NFL, thrives to the extent he can thrive. I mean, he was older then anyway.
Yeah.
He was an older quarterback anyway, and thrives in the NFL. I think he probably did TV after that. So that's an example I'm saying of somebody who And by the way, grew up in an impoverished culture where they had dog fighting.
I was about to say,
and did things. Now, did he know that it was wrong? Sure, he did. But he's sitting around saying, "Look, I grew up in a culture where people were getting shot, murdered, human beings." Okay, this is so far down the totem pole. If you listen to him talk, if you read these long exposés about why he was doing that, is because he grew up with human beings getting murdered and shot in drive-bys and all these things. Doesn't mean it's okay, but it gives some type of understanding from his perspective.
It's also a cultural thing in the way that people deal. We talked about this a few days ago, that our feeling culturally about animals, at least in this part of the world right now, I think is indicative of a very healthy, wealthy society.
Sure it is.
Because I don't know that there's ever been a culture on the planet that's existed where dogs existed that they didn't have some kind of dog fighting and thought it was a normal, fine thing to do.
I mean, dogs were working animals like a horse.
That said, dog fighting, ew, gross.
But I'm saying
awful.
that's a redemption story of somebody that was convicted, went to prison, got out of prison. I mean, was a huge celebrity, got out of prison, came back to the arena in which he was famous in, and succeeded, and then went on and I think did broadcasting and whatnot, whatever else he could do there after his retirement. So, to your point, is that because he went to prison and paid the price? You know, paid his
Did society? I think society. That's an interesting question because I don't know. I
think America loves second chances.
I think I mean, but it depends on what it is you're giving them a second chance for. And again, where that line gets drawn. I mean, nobody's letting OJ go comment on Monday Night Football, for instance. But he'd probably be a great commenter.
But OJ
probably knows everything that's happening.
He certainly knows how to murder somebody. If you want somebody murdered, but he never got convicted.
He never did. Well, he did not, but he was definitely convicted, at least in the press and in popular society, right? I mean, look, I'm not going to say OJ did it because, like you said, he wasn't convicted, but
I'll say that OJ did it. I mean, come on. But does it fit the beyond a reasonable doubt? I don't know. I didn't watch all that shit.
I don't know. I don't know. All I can think of right now is, well, it's official, ladies and gentlemen. Murder is legal in the state of California. R.I.P. Norm Macdonald.
It's the end of the O.J. Simpson trial, and Court TV had their highest ratings ever. Tomorrow, Court TV declares bankruptcy. It's like one of his jokes.
Here's one. It has nothing to do with O.J., but it might be my favorite Norm Macdonald thing. So this week in the college charts, at number 1, Better Than Ezra. At number 2, Ezra. Oh, yeah, speaking of stand-ups who were fantastic, that was another guy I wish I'd have gotten to see. Have you ever gone to a stand-up show?
I've never been to one.
It's so much fun. I've gotten to see, Bill Burr, Mike Birbiglia, Lewis Black. Recently got to see Lewis Black in Birmingham.
Dave Chappelle?
Yeah, I did. It was at that show. It was Jeff Ross, Donnell Rollins, who was on the Chappelle show. He's the I'm rich bitch guy.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle, Joe Rogan, and Tom Segura.
Okay.
And I didn't know who Tom Segura really was before going to that. And he was no offense to anybody, but he was by far the most hilarious human being there. I've gotten to see Patton Oswalt and Eddie Izzard, weirdly in Meridian, Mississippi.
It's kind of out of place for him, don't you think?
He did a thing, or she did a thing, I think, I'm not sure, but, say Eddie's a she, did a thing where he wanted to play in all 50 states. And so Mississippi's one of the 50 states, and so he did a show in Meridian. And it was funny. It was really good. And then afterwards, it's at the Queen Theater in Meridian. You know, that little theater over there. And he comes down in sort of the vestibule area to just say hey and maybe answer a few questions. Do you remember that movie from the 90s that had Sean Connery in it called The Avengers? It was based on that TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad. Because my brother went with me. and Eddie Izzard's down there, and he's like talking to everybody. He's like, anybody got any questions? And my brother said, yeah, I got a question. That Avengers movie was a real piece of shit, wasn't it?
What did he say?
He just like rolled his eyes and it's like, yeah, it was, I was young, whatever, and moved on. But yeah, my brother just for no reason shit talked.
Took a shit on him.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go.
If I bought you tickets, you wouldn't go with me?
If you bought tickets and you were gonna go with me, I would go.
Okay.
Yes.
So you would go. But
Yeah.
you would. What you're saying is you wouldn't seek it out.
No.
Okay.
It doesn't mean I'm anti-comedy. It just means I'm lazy.
I understand.
You know what I was thinking about this the other day because we talked about this one time a long time ago. This is how stupid I was when I was a kid. I'm still kind of stupid now, but I just thought people got up there just like we're doing. It's like, hey, here's some
You
comedy.
just started making stuff
Yeah,
up.
here's
I
some
think
comedy.
everybody
Here's
thinks
some
that
comedy.
at some point.
I don't, it's kind of, I don't want to say like pulling the curtain back like the Wizard of Oz, but that they go from city to city to city and just say the same
Yeah,
things.
I've got another friend of mine, and she's frankly like a brilliant person, but who basically said exactly the same thing because I was talking to her about comedy. She's like, she said, oh, I don't like stand-up comedians. I'm like, why not? They're trying to make me laugh. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Well, wait, they're not going up there and making it up. You know that, right? I'm like, yeah, I know. They've crafted a thing. They've honed it. They've tested it.
Oh, I don't have
And they're
that
giving
problem.
you the best product possible. He's like, yeah, I just don't like that.
So she just like spontaneous comedy, like people sitting on whoopee cushions and whatnot.
I guess so. And look, I don't have a problem with that either. I like the.
I guess I'm
whoopee
saying when
cushion.
I was a kid,
You thought someone was just like getting up there and like, here's what's flowing
just
out of
rapping,
my mind.
yeah, just saying something, and it was hilarious.
I think a lot of people still think that. I think a lot of people, maybe not now, but a few years ago, they go into a comedy club and someone gets up there and Jerry Seinfeld's like, did you ever notice that? I think he's just making it up. But these are the same people I think who think TV shows are real.
Well, that was the only time I ever saw a stand-up comedy thing was on TV. So,
Right.
I mean, I probably at the time didn't know that people wrote scripts for TV either. So that tells you how moronic I was.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Really? Yeah, I think I would like to go. Do you remember the show? I can remember being a kid, the show that used to come on, and it was Rosie O'Donnell had a stand-up comedy show.
Vaguely. There were a lot of those like highlight young comedian shows back then.
And it was like she would do a little monologue, and it would be like 3 comedians or maybe two or 3.
Yeah.
And then you look back, and it's Rosie O'Donnell.
Rodney Dangerfield did some famous ones. The Rodney Dangerfield Young Comedian Special. Like you watch those, and it's like, oh, that's everybody I've ever seen in an Adam Sandler movie.
Is Rodney Dangerfield still alive?
No, Rodney Dangerfield died a while back.
I was about to say.
A long time ago, yeah. Rodney Dangerfield was something else. You know, he was like a vinyl siding salesman for most of his life.
I can see that.
It wasn't until I think the guy was pushing 50 before he actually made any kind of career.
So you're saying there's some hope?
For me?
For me.
For you? Maybe. Yeah. But he, I mean, yeah, if you ever just want to see something just bonkers, go back and watch, like, Back to School. I mean, it's just bananas, that movie. In a good way.
I wonder what he was like in his personal life.
He smoked a lot of weed is what he did.
I mean, he was essentially the same character in every movie.
Well, he couldn't get any respect. That's why.
I don't. But I'm saying.
I wish I could remember Rodney Dangerfield joke off the top of my head.
I can't remember any of them. But I'm saying in all those movies, like those '80s movies, he's basically the
it's
exact
not a lot.
same
It's
character.
like Caddyshack and Back to School,
What's the one where they play soccer?
Ladybugs. But that's in the 90s.
That's like
I think.
1991.
That might have been the last movie Rodney Dangerfield did.
Okay.
But he famously smoked a lot of weed, like all the time, and was not shy about showing himself off to people. In fact, if you listen to these stand-ups talk about, meeting Rodney, it's always a story that's, I call him Rodney like I knew him, Rodney Dangerfield, a story where they go in a dressing room and Rodney Dangerfield's wearing a bathrobe that's not tied up and nothing else.
Oh, so he was flopping his dong
He
around.
was flopping his Dangerfield, yes.
Gotcha. Well, good for him.
I mean, I guess so, dude.
You should knock before you come in there.
Hey. Can't get no respect.
Especially if you know what the guy's got. You know, if he's got a bazooka, don't get in the line of fire.
But you know, he was from that school of comedians where it was jokes, like straight jokes, versus, you know, sort of the storytelling thing that you know, I think Bill Cosby kind of in a way invented that style of stand-up, where it's long-form stories versus just joke after joke after joke after joke. And there's, you know, like a guy I really want to see is a guy named Jimmy Carr. You ever heard of him? No? Okay. He's a British stand-up comedian. I believe from Slough.
Slow.
Yeah, I don't know how to spell that. I would assume Slough.
I think that's right.
I don't know. Sounds Norman. But he's like one of the best like straight joke guys there are. They're all like terrible. I mean, like funny, but like morally reprehensible jokes.
Is there any other kind?
Well, his are pretty strong, man.
Oh, okay.
Pretty tough. Like I'm not going to tell any right now because I'm afraid.
I mean, this is our show, though.
It is.
Is it going to be NC-17?
A lot of it might be. I like. Oh, one of the coolest shows I got to see was the Steve Martin Short thing those guys do now, Martin and Martin, which was great.
What are they, like 80 years old?
Pushing it.
Yeah.
Steve Martin's older than Martin Short, I think. But Martin Short did this thing, and it's so deeply stupid. But I will never forget it, and it was one of the funniest things that I've just ever witnessed. They'd done like a break in the show, and they were coming back. And they start playing bagpipe music. It might have been Amazing Grace. And this gigantic guy in like a kilt and with a little hat starts marching like straight this way. And then coming at him is Martin Short doing the same march. And then Martin Short jumps up in the big guy's arms and puts his thumb in the big guy's mouth. And then Martin Short is the bagpipes that are being played. And he just kicks his legs. And me explaining it seems just like it is unsettlingly how funny that was when he did that. So good job, Martin Short.
Well, you ruined the joke.
I suppose I did. I suppose if you ever go see Steve Martin and Martin Short and you start hearing that bagpipe music, you'll be like, oh, God, that Wade.
Damn you, Wade.
Ruined this for me.
Piss on my head.
No, it's not. You go to a lot of music stuff, though. You do go to a lot of shows. Like, you've seen David Byrne a number of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have.
Who's the guy I would really like to go see? So thank you for inviting me.
Well, we could have gone. The show that he had, which was the big show, they actually made a Broadway show out of it.
Yep.
And
what was it called? Do you remember?
I don't know.
For those of you who may not be aware, David Byrne is the guy from Talking Heads.
Let's look it up. Keep talking while I look it up.
Talking Heads was a band from the 1980s who was famous for playing at CBGB, which was a bar in New York that opened up a lot of punk acts. And Talking Heads, that I've always thought was a bit odd, is considered to be one of the forerunners of punk music.
American Utopia.
American Utopia is the name
which
of the
was
show?
the name of that album. I don't know why I didn't. I thought it was something different.
Stop Making Sense is a famous concert movie that Talking Heads did, which I believe is how I got into them, with the whole big suit thing and all. Definitely one of my favorite bands.
It's awesome because the thing about that show, you can watch it. I mean, it's all over TV. You can watch it because it's been run so many times, and it is a
American Utopia.
American Utopia, and it's a combination similar to Stop Making Sense, but even more involved in that it is almost a true stage production.
Yeah.
All the musicians move in and out and come. They're all wearing the same.
Was anybody who was in Talking Heads other than David Byrne in that show?
No.
I don't think they.
I don't
think they talk, or they're buddies.
I'm
anymore.
not sure they've. I think they have reconciled to some degree, but I don't think. I mean, two of them are married. You know, the bass player and the drummer got married, and they had a group called the Tom Tom Club.
Yeah, I remember. What's that song? Yeah.
Genius of Love.
Boyfriend.
Genius of Love. That's it.
Remember in the movie, she just does this dance where she like locks her knees and just wiggles them back and forth.
Tina Weymouth, that's her name. I can't think of what his name is. One of them's name is Jerry, but I think that's the guitar player. Anyway, no, there's nobody that's. But they march all around, and it's all this crazy shit. And David Byrne's got this thing where he's kind of almost like I don't know what, like he's got this big brain that he sings to that he holds up, and like a big plasticine brain. But he plays a lot of Talking Heads hits, but he plays a lot of songs off that album, which the album's really good. And I just randomly, because I bought a lot of the David Byrne albums, so I bought this album, and I was listening to it. I was like, man, this is really good, because a lot of it can be really esoteric. And this was kind
of the Tom Waits side of things.
Well, but good. You know, it's got some musicality to it. It's not somebody farting in a fucking kazoo.
Good God, it's not just farting in a kazoo.
But anyway, so somehow I was looking. I don't know if I was, but I found an he played at Memphis in May, and it was not listed. It was like a late edition or something. And so me and my wife and another couple went up there, and the guy who I was with wanted to go see somebody else. I was like, listen, I'm going to go see all these people and whatever, because, you know, you have these conflicts, which is inevitable with those festival shows. There's always these people
Sugar Ray might be playing at the same time.
Right, Sugar Ray. Or I don't know what. The Dixie Chicks. But
they're just the chicks now, Mark.
Well,
get with the times.
I refuse to get with the times.
I know you do.
But I went to it, and, you know, I tried to get my wife to listen to all this stuff, but, you know, she tolerates me being slightly weird. And so I think she listened to it some, and I was like, listen, we got to go to this. And the other couple that was with us went to another whoever it was. It was so good, and my wife was, like, converted instantly.
That's great.
So then they came and played in Birmingham, and we went back and saw them, and then we booked tickets to go see them in Broadway in New York, and then of course you had the COVID death virus came, and that was
nixed those plans.
That was the end of that, along with all the COVID bullshit that came along with it. But I guess he's back playing. I haven't looked if it's reopened.
I saw a thing. This was a few months back, but it was like a teaser for what. I mean, the teaser was David Byrne goes into a dry cleaning store to pick up a suit. And he picks up the big suit.
Oh, the big suit.
And so it seemed as though they're doing either a tour stop making sense, or they're doing a new movie stop making sense.
He may just be tickling people.
Well, it tickled the hell out of me.
But he plays a lot of Talking Head songs, which if you like, I mean, he plays random songs. He'll play big Talking Head songs like singles, and then one or two other ones, if you look at the concert, one or two or three other ones that were like lesser, not even singles, but may have been like album cuts. That like
my kids know all the worst of Psycho Killer.
Well, he doesn't play that. He doesn't play that. But I think when we were there, like he didn't play like E Zimbra. They played maybe Remain in Light and something else when we were there, in addition to some hits, plus what was on the album, plus some of the other stuff that's on his older albums. I think it was, and the show was awesome. Because they're like marching around, and they're like, it'll be a guy.
He's definitely an audio-visual kind of guy.
Instead of having a guy playing drums, it'll be a guy playing a snare drum, a guy playing a tom-tom drum, and a guy playing whatever the hell else drums are.
Like just cymbals and stuff?
And they're just like walking around, and it'll be like playing it, and they'll be marching around and doing all this crazy shit, and there'll be all these things moving around in the background, like physical things, not lasers.
Yeah.
Like physical things. That's what I'm saying. It's almost like a play. Which is why it translated so well to Broadway. You can watch it easily. If you go to YouTube, just look it up, or whatever the hell you want to watch. You can watch a whole show. It's good.
I might do that tonight.
And the show is good. Not just the music, the show is good. And I mean, he's got to be 75 years old. I don't know, 70 years old. And he's marching around in a suit in bare feet, nonstop for like 2 hours. Just going. The guy's got to be in great shape. I mean, he looks, you know.
I think he should be on his publicist team.
Shit, if he had me, I would do it. I'd do it for free.
He's from Baltimore, right?
I think that's right. Somewhere in Maryland. They went to, all of them went to art school together.
I knew that.
Which is interesting. All these people went to art school. Like John Lennon went to art school. Not Mick
you know
Jagger.
where Mick Jagger? That's exactly what I was about to say. So I guess you do know where Mick Jagger went to school.
The London School of Economics.
London School of Economics, baby.
But I think Keith went to art school.
I don't think they talk to each other anymore.
Did they not play music
They
together?
do that.
They just
But
walk.
you got to think at this point, I mean, Satisfaction just has to be muscle memory for everybody.
I mean, they look like living mummies.
The joke
they
20
look-
years ago is Keith Richards is still alive.
But all of them look like desiccated corpses. They look old, man.
I mean, yeah, they've
Old.
It's interesting because the Stones have been around for so long, and they were basically like I think good-natured competition of the Beatles at the time, right? I don't think they ever had like a beef with one another or anything like that. But I wonder if the Beatles had gone on a different track and stayed just doing it like the Rolling Stones have been, if they would still be as relevant. Because I'll give the Rolling Stones this. There hasn't been just an enormous amount of crap that they produced. Like a lot of bands.
There was a lot of crap in the 70s.
In the
and
70s,
80s.
I was about to say, with the exception of like the disco-y stuff. But the Stones are pretty good.
Well, I mean, how much good stuff? I think the thing to me is, I don't know how many albums they had in the 60s while the Beatles were making music. 4?
Not as many as the Beatles,
And
certainly.
I bet the first, at least one album was, and just like the Beatles, but I would say even more with the Stones, probably 50% covers the Stones. 50%.
Yeah, I think the first album they did was just nothing but old like Mississippi blues songs.
You know, the Stones.
That's where their name comes from.
The Stones' relevance is that they existed and had hits outside the '60s. It's why people hear them. If you listen to them, most people know they're set like 1969 to 1981 songs. That's what you know.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, you know Satisfaction and Ruby Tuesday, Get Off My Cloud,
Painted Black.
Paint It Black.
Can't always get what you want. Sometimes. You might get what you need.
I don't know. I would like if you listen to them talk, the Beatles. You know, their competition was the Beach Boys on production and songwriting, and 'cause, I mean
That's what they thought?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when they heard like Pet Sounds,
Pet Sounds, have you ever sat down and just listened to that
yeah,
whole
I
record?
have the record of Pet
It's
Sounds.
so good.
But that's because Brian Wilson was like
Bananas. I understand
slipping
that.
into a schizophrenic
Well,
acid dream.
Dude, for that record, it worked. If you've never listened to, like, get on your Spotify after this show is over and just start the album Pet Sounds. I know it's the Beach Boys, but if you just listen to that thing from start to finish, it's like it's one of the most magical damn albums that came out of that era.
I think, and I could be wrong, I think the Beatles released Rubber Soul. Brian Wilson, who was, I think, making Pet Sounds, heard Rubber Soul and was just dismayed because it sounded so awesome. So he goes back into whatever psychosis he's in and finishes Pet Sounds and makes Pet Sounds. And so I think Paul McCartney has said it as an older guy now, which he lies his ass off now. But
Who was it you were talking about who's also a commiserate liar? Anyway, go ahead.
but that they heard Pet Sounds, and I don't know if they were making Revolver or I don't even know if they were in the studio, because I think even then the Beatles were in the studio for like 4 days to make an album.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were there for 3 months like the White Album or whatever the hell else they made, but I think they heard that and were like, oh my God, this is so good. And so they felt like he had to up Rubber Soul. They had to up that with Revolver, which they did, in my opinion.
Their Revolver's really good.
It's really good. I think that could be right, or else it's Revolver, then Pet Sounds, then Sgt. Pepper's, which may be instead of Rubber Soul. I like the Beatles. I felt like a lot of...
I know you like the Beatles.
I felt like they took a lot of chances. You know, the Rolling Stones didn't take a lot of chances. They played and I like the Rolling Stones. I think the guitar part's awesome. I think Keith Richards is a great guitar player. They didn't take a lot of chances. They basically played the same songs kind of over and over again.
I mean, it's what happens when an economist and an artist start a band together, which in some ways is what this show is, Mark. That
Is
makes
it?
you the Mick Jagger and me the Keith Richards. I need to start doing more drugs.
Huh. What do I need to do? Have a big mouth.
I'm just get addicted to relations with younger women. I think is what you need.
Well, I'm out on that. I can have a lot of damn negative traits, but that's not
That's
one of
not
them.
one of them.
Even if I was single, I don't think I don't understand how that works. Because what the fuck do you talk about?
I think the goal is to do as little talking as
So
possible.
that's, I guess. See, that's what I'm thinking. Is
No,
that-
I feel really fortunate that I missed the whole, what is it called? Tinder age. Not like the app, the online dating thing. Not the
yeah.
Tinder.
I was like, what?
I had a Tinder
you
without
gotta,
the E,
yeah,
just the
I got
R.
it.
Yeah,
The dating app.
that stuff. Because I can see how that would make you a psychopath in both directions.
Me or one?
Anyone,
Okay.
anybody.
Just so you-
Like either you're getting so much attention based upon, you know, just this very facile version of yourself, which is a picture and a description, right? You're either getting a lot of attention or you're getting absolutely no attention at all. We're watching some dogs have a discussion with one another.
Is that the guy that had that dog here that time?
That is that guy, Mark.
I mean, that's a dog you don't bring because that dog, if it got a hold of that other dog, just eats it.
It does.
It doesn't injure that dog. It just eats that other dog.
I understand. Yeah, I don't know why I care. Like, I'm worried this guy's going to hear the show and be like, I'm never listening to Probably Relevant, Possibly Interesting ever again because he said my dog was being a bad boy.
Well, the guy is being totally irresponsible.
Well, he didn't let the dog eat the other dog.
But I mean, he just lets the dog just
So he's
live
not
in
being
fear.
totally
he just he
irresponsible.
lets the dog just live in complete fear. Like, I might let this dog go to murder your dog. I mean,
That's another thing that wasn't a thing when we were kids is people bringing their dogs everywhere. I don't have a problem with people bringing their dogs everywhere, but it wasn't a thing.
people
Dog
are
just kind of ran around.
people are antisocial. They like dogs better than people. We already talked about that.
Good Lord, we're just making circles. Okay, in terms of, you know, we talked a lot about the Beatles stuff, but what did you think about Bob Dylan from that era? Because I listened to a lot of that when I was a kid.
Can be hit and miss, but I still like it. I like a lot of it.
Like
I like Bob Dylan until he finds Jesus, basically. I mean,
Okay.
and I like that Bob Dylan found Jesus. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but it's kind of like, you know, he made that Christian album.
You're going to have to serve somebody.
Right. And I can appreciate that, man. Like, you're, if not then, the biggest, but at one time we're the biggest musician and cultural touchstone of the age, and you made a Christian rock album. But I don't know that he recovered from that until he made the album, that Time Out of Mind album.
That was a good one.
That was a good album. Whenever that was, like 91, maybe.
No, later than that, I think.
94, I don't know,
Yeah.
sometime in the early to mid 90s.
It was definitely in the time period where I had money to go buy a CD.
because I had that CD.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
Obviously, I love, you know, the older I get, the more I love the old Dylan, where he's just, you know, 20, 22 years old, and he's just writing from this aggressive, youthful anger and disgust at the generation before, and it's not subtle, it's aggressive, it's on the nose, like songs like God on Our Side or A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. And it's not that I even
but I mean,
completely agree with the point of it, like
Okay.
like what
That's
it's
what I
saying.
I'm telling you.
What I what I like is the audacity and the righteousness that he clearly has while he's saying those things. Like my dad told a story, but my dad got thrown out of his house for playing God on Our Side for my
Thrown out of Bob Dylan's house?
not thrown out of Bob Dylan's house. That would have been cooler. Thrown out of the home that he lived in.
Oh.
Like his father kicked him out of the house because he played in that song.
Did he ever go back?
I mean, I think like within an hour.
Oh, okay. Some of that, I appreciate it for the same reasons. It's hard for me to dig in and find a place there because it was kind of so much of the time and of his generation. And I guess I didn't listen to that when I was the same age as him.
I listened to it when I was much younger than him.
Okay.
Oh, gather round people wherever you roam and admit that the waters around you have grown and accept that soon you'll be cast like a stone for your time. God, just saying that like I could remember it off the top of my head. Clearly I can't. But it's just this, I'm going to make this clear, irrefutable argument, and there's nothing you can do about it. Get the hell out of our way and let us do something. Which is ironically, those are the people that he would be castigating now.
See, this guy's picking that kid up. See, he's picking that kid up because he doesn't want that dog to go eat that kid's face off. Like, that's just irresponsible, man. I'm telling you.
You're absolutely right, and people are being so polite about it.
Let me drink one more beer. Here's what I think about Bob Dylan, and I wouldn't call Bob Dylan a total hypocrite. I'll call him a sideline hypocrite, because there's a line in Stephen King's biography where he writes, and he's talking about his generation, and he says something like this. He says, people, I think he has like a little preface. He says, people malign our generation, and rightly so. We had the ability to change the world, and what do? Create the home shopping network. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, well, sure, that's what you're going to do, is just get a job and make money and do everything else that everybody did. You just were bitching because you didn't want to go fight in Vietnam, and I would bitch too. I wasn't going to go fight in Vietnam.
Be fair, there were other things. I mean, there were a bunch of. You think about kids who came from like, up north somewhere and came down to Mississippi to try to help people.
But they're not singing protest songs. They got murdered and put in dams.
That's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that those songs were either inspired or inspired people to do things like that.
They might have. I think if you didn't have the draft in Vietnam, you wouldn't have had any of that. Because people don't.
That's
I think a lot
true.
of it is just this is affecting me. You had those saints, and I would say martyrs, the people that got killed.
Especially those folks down in Kemper County and in Neshoba County.
The people that came and did that. They did with knowing fear for their life. I mean, got on buses and came.
And can you imagine? I mean, just the like, kind of going back to what we did on an earlier show, where it's just sometimes hard to be from here, where you have people who can just blow up a church with kids in it, right? And know that they're going to walk. They're not going to get into any trouble because it's despicable.
I think it's easy for us to do that.
So it's easy to write righteous songs about that because it's so unrighteous to do that.
Well, I think it's hard for me to say something which I want to say, which is, yes, it's horrible, but horrible shit happens all the time.
Of course it does.
And it happens all the time, and it happens in places that aren't here.
But that doesn't mean you don't point out the horrible things.
It does. It doesn't mean you don't point out. It doesn't mean you don't remember it. It does mean that horrible people doing horrible shit is not isolated to one part of the country or one group of people. People who are in power want to keep power. That's kind of what it boils down to. I guess what I'm talking about is you can write a song in like 1961 called "The Times They Are A-Changin'" that is so righteous and direct because it is so clear who the good guys and bad guys are. And I don't, and that's, and I think that in some ways, in some instances, is much more difficult to do than it was back then. Like the guys who blow the church up and get away with it are the bad guys. Because their reason for blowing the church up is because these black people were trying to register to vote. But there's still that. I guess what I'm saying is there's still nefarious, awful people around now.
Sure, there are.
They're blended in with society, and there's still nefarious, awful people in the past before that. We just forgot about them because we didn't write it down, and you didn't have people that sang protest songs, and you didn't have video cameras, and you didn't record all that same shit that happened.
Or we study them. I was telling you before the thing started, I am on this deep pre-Norman English history kick, and the thing is they were all just a bunch of thugs, anybody in power. Like if you were a Saxon or if you were a native Briton or if you were a Viking, it was very, very similar to the mafia in the way that you dealt with things, which is by killing the crap out of people in the most brutal way possible.
But that's the way a lot of people deal with things. I mean, through all of human history.
That's the lesson that you learn, is that we are fortunate to live in the era that we live in, because things aren't quite as well. Not only in the era, but in the location we live in, because things aren't anywhere remotely as brutal.
And I'm going to tell you this, and this is not some kind of apology for the South, because family's not from the South. I don't think I have to apologize for it, but national politics was fine with all this shit happening. They were.
That's absolutely true.
All the 3 terms that FDR had, and Harry Truman and John F. Kennedy,
100%.
They were all fine with that. It was just when
because they were Democrats, and the way they got elected was by keeping the South solid. So they took things like civil rights off the ballot. That's totally true.
They would not have won any of those elections.
And it's the interesting thing about the shift in those parties, not to just jump straight into politics, is that the Democratic Party was thought of as the party as a populist party that was supposed to take care of the less wealthy. I mean, it was very much thought of as it's the little guy versus the big corporate interests, and all the corporate interests were in the North, which is where all the Republicans were. And then in the 80s, there was a gigantic shift with Reagan being elected and the rise of the Christian right that abandoned that. And the reason that it got abandoned is because Democrats started to become the party of civil rights because of Lyndon Johnson.
Well, white people were all for the government helping them, but when they started trying to help black people and do something for them, they were like, to hell with this.
I know. Now we're going to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Anyway.
I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, now you've got to see. The funny thing is that
I don't think that there's a philosophy behind either party anymore. I used to I wrote a column a million years ago for the newspaper, and this was a long time ago, where I just without saying which party was which, just laid out the philosophical and historical basis of each one.
And you had to guess
which one. Yeah, you have to guess which one it is. And you can write it a certain way, and when the Democratic Party was founded, it sounds like the Republicans would be super into it, and vice versa. And really, it all just boils down to how you feel about race.
I think that's bullshit. The way that governs politics now is just how you feel about money.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
All they want is money. That's all anybody wants. That's the sad thing. That's the thing about Bob Dylan, all that stuff, is that everybody's got an opinion about something until the money gets in the way. Then they shut the hell up and take the money.
And take the money.
And go home and roll around in their bed of money.
And people who, jump that trend are thought of as either heroes or fools, right? Maybe both.
I wouldn't. It's hard to place your stock in somebody when they would say, like, oh, I don't care about that. You'd be like, well, what's wrong with you? Well, I do think there's something where, and I'm not even old enough, because I don't think it exists in our lifetime. I think at some time period there were people that were more willing to do better with themselves and do better to sacrifice at least some immediate. I'll give you an example. This is a bizarre example, but I was reading this thing that came out. It doesn't have anything to do with anything, but it's an oddball story. I thought it was neat. The guy, his name was a congressman. His last name is Ryan, and he's the guy that goes down to French Guiana during the Jonestown preamble
suicide
before they killed themselves.
Yeah.
I think he's
Was this the guy who was there when it happened?
He's the guy that gets murdered on the runway.
Yeah.
So, but he gets these letters from people, right? And one of them is like I think he's in California. He's a congressman in California. He gets these letters, like a 50-some-year-old guy. He gets these letters, and he's investigating these people that he gets this stuff. And they've had diplomats. They've had these people that come, whatever, 1 or 2, 3 people for a couple hours. He brings like 12 people down to South America. And they basically figure out that there's some nefarious shit going on. So he helps these people escape. You know, he's taking them out by helicopter and all this stuff. And eventually, a couple days later, gets murdered, gets shot by snipers out there trying to leave.
I thought when people were trying to leave, there was like a bunch of gunfire because
that's after the fact. So
okay.
he's helped people leave. He stays there for like 2 weeks or something, or a week in South America, and people who have fled, who ran out into the jungle, find him. This was the guy. I read like a excerpt from this book, this reporter's writing a book. My whole point in saying that is, here's a guy, 2-term, right? You get a 2-term in the House, who goes down, takes 12 people to South America to investigate this, right? Saves 30, 40 people and brings them back to America. Gets killed on the landing pad for where his helicopter is, and one or two other people with him that went with him on the tour,
yeah.
Right? Are there people that would do that now? I mean, that's 1978, 79.
In Congress?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
A congressman, right?
I'm not so sure.
So,
are there people? Definitely.
But
are there congressmen? I don't know.
And it wasn't like, I mean, that's one of the most well-known. Up until 9/11, it was the largest loss of civilian life in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Or 21st, maybe, I don't know, whatever it was, because that was 21st century, 9/11. I can't remember what I read.
So for people who don't know, give the quick breakdown of what this thing was.
Jim Jones was
He was a, let's just say, cult leader.
Well, he started out, I think, in some semi-real splinter group church, and they left the United States to go found whatever it was
Jonestown.
The Jonestown, which was this place where I don't know if they thought God was going to appear or they could set up some whatever, but in the middle of the South American jungle in Guyana, and people would go. There's all these reports that these people were being held against their will, that it was a
prison camp. There was a bunch of
camp.
mamas saying, I don't know where my baby is. I think something's bad is happening.
Right. Yeah, or parents that their kids had left and gone down there, you know. And it turned out it was true. And he bluffed through all kinds of people. All these different bureaucrats that came from South America would come, U.S. diplomats, all these people would come, and he bluffed through them. But this congressman came, and he basically took all these people and ferreted it out, and they ended up killing him, and that was the end. Like the next day, they drank.
They drank poison-laced Kool-Aid.
Yeah, Flavor Aid, actually.
Flavor Aid. That.
But a lot of it, you know,
when it was hundreds of people that died. Yeah, children. It was awful.
I think it was like 600 plus people, and some of it, you know, they read that it was a mass suicide. A lot of it was, but a lot of them, it was parents killing their kids. They wouldn't drink it, they'd inject them with needles and kill them, or it was other people doing it, or some people they just shot. So my point in all that, not to get too macabre, is that the guy who's a congressman goes down there, and that's what blows the thing wide open, and I guess subsequently leads to them committing suicide. But, you know, where are those guys and gals? They're not. They don't exist.
I think they still exist. I do. I don't buy this idea that you know, we've lost some great moral component or heroic component. I think it happens all the time. I just don't know that you necessarily read about it. I don't know that you necessarily are confronted with it in a social media kind of way. But I think that decency and humanity are still very real things. And he doesn't. That's why I'm a little bit country and he's a little bit of rock and roll. Anyway, folks, I'm about to wrap this up, Mark.
Well,
we hit the 2-hour mark on the thingy.
You're the rapper. Wrap it up, son.
I am the rapper.
You're the rapper of things. So wrap it up, put a bow on it.
Thank you so much, of course, for listening to the show. We appreciate it humongously. He asked me not to talk about the Patreon because we don't know what we're doing with the Patreon, but we're working on the thing. The email address is
info@probablyirrelevantpodcast.com.
That's info@probablyirrelevantpodcast.com, where you can send us your suggestions. You can tell us we're wrong. You can tell us whatever you want to. And also, please visit us on the internets at probablyirrelevant irrelevantpodcast.com. That's probably irrelevantpodcast.com. As you may not be aware, or you may or may not be aware, we are also doing a video component to this show too. We are on the YouTubes, and our YouTube channel is called
Probably Irrelevant.
Show, right?
Well, no, it's Probably Irrelevant. Not Probably Irrelevant Show.
Okay, the YouTube
It's probably
channel
irrelevant.
is called
Probably Irrelevant.
Branding. So if you want to look at us for some reason
could make it
while we
show.
talk, you can do that too. Huh?
We could make it show.
We can make it show.
Like Probably Irrelevant Show.
Probably irrelevant. We'll just leave it probably irrelevant.
That's what I think.
So while nobody's confused, let's just leave it there.
Okay.
So check us out there too. Tell your friends about us. We really appreciate. There's a few people who I know who have listened to every single episode that we've done, and for those of y'all out there, we love you with all our hearts, or I do anyway. I can't speak for.
Well, see, but I
Prince
love
of
the people
Darkness
that
over
listen
here.
to one. I don't have to love everybody. I mean, people that listen to all of them. If you listen to one, I mean, I don't love anybody but my family, but I do
Okay.
like you.
Let me rephrase. Anybody who's listened to a show, I love you too. But I'm trying to show a special thanks to the people who have stuck with us over the past dozen weeks or so, whenever the hell this comes out. So thank you. This is the longest outro in the history of the world. Do you have anything you want to say, Mark Alexander?
No.
Good night, Mark. Say good night, Mark.
Good night, Mark.
Bye, guys.
See ya.